Hey guys, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Alex, and welcome back to the Debt Lounge podcast. Or welcome if it's your first time.
Today we get to talk about movies.
Yeah, because there's a lot coming out.
There are. And I'm excited. Movies are like one of my favorite subjects. Before you even started this podcast, we were already like talking so much about things that could have been in the podcast.
Yeah, they could have been. Yeah, and you know what? Let's dial it back. Let's dial it back a little. So, as of this recording, it is the week that Black Panther comes out.
I want to see it so bad.
It comes out at the end of this week, I think. You said the 16th, right?
That's what my phone told me.
Okay. So, that means that you know, stay away from the theaters for about a week because it's going to be packed.
It's going to be so bad.
For days.
Especially, like, any time a Marvel movie comes out, like, you want to avoid the theaters for a while. But, like, this one especially, because it has that, like, cultural significance,
yeah,
it's gonna be...
it's gonna be a little bit worse to get to the theaters over the hype. Unless you, like, order online and get your tickets, like, ahead of time, yeah, you're gonna be stuck. This movie's gonna be sold out for a while.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Definitely. I'm hoping it's very good. Like, everything that I've seen of the, like, pre-release reviews have been really good. So, hopefully. Yeah. And I really like, just from Civil War, I really, really like this actor as T'Challa.
I've been seeing a lot of good things about the soundtrack. Like, especially when I go to class, since I'm taking, like, classes on music and films. Everyone is geeking out over the soundtrack. I still haven't heard it yet.
For Black Panther?
Yeah.
Okay, that should be interesting, because one of the big problems that Marvel has with their soundtrack is they tend to be really basic and, like, you don't remember anything from it. And like...
That's because it's, like, it's modern fanfare. You know, it's a superhero movie, so the music sounds like superhero movie music.
Nah, like, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head from, like, the Marvel's repertoire from, like, their soundtracks is, like, I can kind of remember, like, a motif from the Avengers theme.
I can't. The only noticeable soundtrack in any Marvel's movie was Guardians of the Galaxy, which that's just because it used memorable music.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy was all, like, popular music.
Yeah, it didn't really have a score, but what did have one that I really liked, Ragnarok. That had that like synthy techno score, felt very unique and like...
See, it had a cool score, but it wasn't, as much as I liked Ragnarok, is like by far the best Thor movie, and one of the top Marvel movies, I think. But like, I still don't remember the score. Like Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings music is fantastic. And, like, I remember a lot of it. And, like...
Okay, so, small interjection. I am so upset with my teacher because he gave me the most bullshit assignment that has been driving me mad, all because of the Lord of the Rings.
It's the music and film and television one. So it counts as part of this subject.
It's the music and film scoring thing. It's the same class but different, which is fucking stupid. Anyway, so we got to class one day, and he's like, "All right, for class, we're gonna watch like 40 minutes of Lord of the Rings." So we do this, and then he's like, "All right, so you think you got, you know, the general gist of the first Lord of the Rings movie? All right, let's go back to the very first, like, 1.5 minutes. Just up to the point where the title screen comes on." Okay, based on that little snippet up to the point where the titles, you know, pops on, there it is, Lord of the Rings. What is the point of this movie? Based on nothing but the music.
And he did that after he had you guys watch, like, the first 40 minutes?
Yeah.
See, that's a before thing. If you're gonna do that, which, like, you can't do, Like, based off of the music in the first, like, 1.5 minutes, you can probably tell it's a fantasy, and that's probably about it.
It drove me up the wall, because it's like, I'm giving out answers based on, like, the movie itself, the rest of the movies in the franchise.
Right, like, as someone who has seen all of them, and, like...
And then it's like, but no, it's not about any of that stuff. Like, knowing what's going to happen and being like, that's the point of this movie. That's the point of this franchise. I've seen them all. It's not that. It's like, oh no, the music is really sad. It's sad. Like, it's longing for something. The music has a sense of separation and searching. Based on the music alone, the point of the movie is the ring is sad and is trying to return to its master.
I wouldn't say the ring is sad. The ring's determined.
It's corrupting people left and right.
I don't think it's sad. I think it's not happy that it's not with Sauron, but like...
It's like... Duh. But then it's like, all right.
It's less a sadness and more an aggressive determination to get back to its rightful owner.
It's a desire. It is a corrupting desire that corrupts everyone it touches. Mm-hmm. With the desire for power. Anyway,
Lord of the Rings are great movies. Like,
yes,
to this day, the best book to movie adaptations ever.
Still never read the books.
And it's the best ever, but they still left, like, a lot out. And those are
sure.
long movies.
Oh, I'm sure. But, yeah, no, I'm just upset because he made us dissect that little snippet and then had the class throw out their own suggestions about, like, what would be a cool, like, motif, like, manipulation of power, strength and love, that kind of thing. And everyone
Which are all, like, those are all themes in the movie.
Yeah.
But, like...
So people throughout those, and they're just like, all right, let's everybody pick one of those, and now make a song about that. So yeah, they picked out manipulation of power. So I've had to make a song about the manipulation of power.
Why did they need Lord of the Rings to get to that assignment?
I don't know.
Like, in that class, Lord of the Rings is a great movie to focus on in that class because the scoring is fantastic. I don't know. I just do not know. But just using the first minute to, like, get to an assignment about, like, nothing to do with Lord of the Rings, that makes no sense.
No, and it's been driving me mad. Because then it's like, it took me like a week to figure out, okay, so it's not that I have to do something kind of like Lord of the Rings. I have to interpret my own little, like, what does that mean? What does manipulation of power mean? What kind of power? Who's manipulating the power? Or is the power itself manipulation? There's all these fucking, like, ins and outs, and you know what? It's bullshit. Movies, stop it. The music can just be awesome and just amplify it. It doesn't have to have its own significant meaning. It can.
Though
it doesn't have to.
I was just reading a post about Lord of the Rings, the music in Lord of the Rings, and how much work went into it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And, like, film scoring is so impressive.
It is. Watching Hans Zimmer do stuff for, like, the Sherlock Holmes movies and making the music for Inception, it's fantastic. Like, what he did with the brass section, it's amazing to watch, but good God, doing this at home in this fucking cramped room on a coffee table with a cheap-ass MIDI keyboard and, like, a handful of plugins, it is a struggle. All right, rant over.
No, but kind of going back to, like, the problem with Marvel movies and the scoring in the Marvel movies, like, good scoring can do so much for a movie. Like, all of the memorable scoring from, like, Star Wars and, like, and Lord of the Rings, and like away from like the huge movie franchises, Buffy, like the scoring after they got over like the 90s synth phase of the scoring, they came up with like some really, really memorable and impactful scoring. And it does so much for a movie or a TV show to have good music. And that's something that the Marvel movies, for as good as they are, lack.
Yeah. Again, outside of like Guardians of the Galaxy. But again, that's just using good music.
Yeah.
Like good pop music.
Which is kind of cheating, but Suicide Squad is an example of a movie that cheated like that, but it was far less successful than Guardians. Like, they just used a bunch of popular music, and it didn't work.
I mean, Suicide Squad just didn't work in general.
Yeah.
Like, to be fair, we kind of talked about this off mic, but my again, the biggest issue that I have with like Suicide Squad is like they don't spend enough time like focusing on the group. Mm-hmm. They don't really build much of like a group dynamic.
Yeah, it's all about Deathstroke and Harley and like that weird plot with the Enchantress, and like there's no cohesiveness within the group until like the very last moment when Harley is randomly like, "You're all my friends," and then they're like suddenly a somewhat cohesive group that can take down Enchantress. And like
it doesn't make sense because it's again,
it also doesn't make sense for those characters to be motivated by the power of friendship.
No. Like they're a group of criminals forced to work together. That doesn't mean that they have to be friends. That doesn't mean that they have to get along.
Right.
They just have to not kill each other long enough to finish this job and hope that they're free. Like that's simple enough. It's not like the Avengers or like Guardians of the Galaxy where when they're first introduced to each other, they're not friends. They don't like each other, but through the struggle of trying to defeat the big bad of the movie, they start working together, and it starts forming a dynamic, which makes them bond, which then by the end of the movie, this dynamic is formed and cohesive to the point where they can actually take down the big bad. I don't think cohesive was the word I was looking for, but I used it. There you go.
And that's how you get to, like, because I love the big, like, group dynamic movies. I like how Marvel has done the Avengers so far, like, handled that group. And, like, how we didn't just right away get to a point where, like, Age of Ultron in the beginning of that movie when they have a party and they can all just, like, sit around a couch and, like, banter about Mjolnir and who can lift it and, like...
I mean, it's heartwarming in a way because they've all been established. They've all had their own movies. In the Avengers, they all kind of bonded in a sense. There were movies after the first Avengers movie, which kind of continued their story. So now it's like this one, they're established in their world. The audience knows who they are. This universe knows who they are.
No Marvel movie is created in isolation anymore. Like Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, the first couple Iron Man movies were created pretty much in complete isolation from the rest of the Marvel universe because there wasn't really a cinematic universe yet.
Right.
It was just Iron Man. But, like... I do like how throughout all the movies they've managed to create a consistent feeling of like this is all happening in the same universe. Things that happen in Captain America affects Iron Man. Like
it feels a lot more
things that happen in Captain America affect Black Panther too because Bucky is in Wakanda. And like he's frozen right now, but he's in Wakanda.
It feels a lot more canonical. And honestly, that's an issue that I have with DC movies. is there's not the same sense of canon in the DC movies, and I feel
I know they're starting to try with that. I haven't seen Justice League yet, but I know they, with like the last few, like when did it start? Did it like them really trying to bring it together again? Was it Batman v Superman?
Yeah, it was Batman v Superman, and then the next movie after that was the Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the Wonder Woman came out, and they connected Wonder Woman.
Oh, did they?
Like, yeah, because at the end, that was... I shouldn't give away the ending, but like at the end, they connect her to Bruce Wayne, and like...
Okay.
But like, Wonder Woman is like a prime example, because everyone DC has a reputation for like really terrible to meh movies, and Wonder Woman I love as an example of how good DC movies could be. I haven't seen... I haven't seen Justice League yet, so I don't know if the trend continued. From what I've heard, it hasn't, but...
No, I haven't heard anything good about it. I haven't seen Wonder Woman, but I enjoyed the Dark Knight movies a lot, the Dark Knight trilogy. Mm-hmm. But I feel like...
The only thing I remember from those is Heath Ledger's Joker.
A lot of people don't remember the first one that well. I remember Heath Ledger. I remember Joker. I remember Bane. I remember the second and third movies a lot more than I remember the first one. But I've only seen the first movie once. Mm-hmm. But I still like those movies in the DCU. But the issue is, it feels like the DCU wants to connect their movies together now, but it's a little bit too late for it, and the way that they've kind of tried to go about it has been a little bit ham-fisted. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, I was explaining this to a friend, Marvel can get away with it because as far as anyone's concerned, the Marvel movies are kind of separate from everything else, from the comics, from the comics, from the games, from any shows. It's its own thing.
Right.
Characters, their dynamics. A lot of this has a lot to do with the fact that they don't own the rights to characters that were super important in the plot lines that they based everything on. Like, I think Sony had Spider-Man, Fox had the X-Men and Fantastic Four.
It was the big problem with introducing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. They didn't own the rights to Magneto, so where did they come from?
Yeah.
You have to change their origin story.
You can't introduce his kids if he's never been in the franchise. And that was the big thing with Spider-Man. It's like, that was the big exciting thing about him. It's like... Mm-hmm.
And then once Marvel did get a hold of Spider-Man, it was the best Spider-Man movie that has been released.
But it's like you then have to change the story to accommodate for the fact that you don't have these characters.
Yeah.
You can't just like their biggest attempt to just retcon characters were Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And even then, they retconned them in a way that worked. Like, they didn't just kind of,
as much crap as Age of Ultron gets, like, I didn't think it was the best Marvel movie to ever come out, but I think it gets way more crap than it deserves.
Yeah, they didn't just kind of throw them in there like, these are two aliens who'd have powers or something.
Like, it's the result of experimentation, much like Cap.
Right.
Like...
And you know what? That works for what the movies is. But for what the movies is. For what the movies are, proper English. But again, they changed the story to accommodate for the fact that they didn't have the rights to the characters they wanted to use. Mm-hmm. And that gives them the freedom then to build a universe around everything. DC tries to make their own stories in terms of the villains and in terms of like the plots that they're involved in, but it doesn't feel like it works. Because it's like Batman in the first Dark Knight movie fights the Scarecrow. That's his big villain. Mm-hmm. The Scarecrow is not a notable villain, which is probably why that movie is extremely forgettable. The Joker is memorable.
I'm not caught up with Gotham, but you're even less caught up with Gotham. But, like, I'm liking this season what they've done with Scarecrow. I'm not caught up yet, but so I could be totally wrong, and Scarecrow is, like, messed up and terrible, but I just haven't seen it yet. But so far, I'm liking it.
Like, Scarecrow could be an interesting villain if done right, but the first Dark Knight movie didn't really, I don't think didn't portray him in a way that made him interesting to watch on film.
Well, The Dark Knight, what year did The Dark Knight come out in?
I think it's like Batman Begins is the first movie of the Dark Knight trilogy. And then it was The Dark Knight, and then it was I forget the name of the last one with Bane. But
so it came out in 2008.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's the same year the first Iron Man movie came out.
Possibly.
But, like, that was the year, like, one of the big things with Iron Man is comic book movies were not the thing yet.
No.
And, like, where Iron Man, yeah, they came out the same year. So, where Iron Man said screw that and embraced the comic book and, like, really, really succeeded, The Dark Knight kind of started the trend of DC shying away from being too comic booky.
Well,
and I feel like that has worked to its detriment, where Marvel's full embrace of the comic book stuff has really helped the franchise.
Well, I feel like I feel like DC shying away from the comic book could have helped it if they handled it better. Because that was kind of the thing that, you know, if the Dark Knight's Batman was the same Batman in the comics, you know, I might enjoy Batman as a character a lot more. Mm-hmm. Because he's still, you know, Batman is Batman, but Batman is, like, non-murderous, I have to arrest these criminals to a fault. Right. And
like,
you go.
Bruce Wayne is an incredibly moral human being that, like, I feel like he's not portrayed very well in the movies.
But I feel like that works in like Heath Ledger's Joker, in the one with Bane. It worked really well trying to, like, determine, you know, these lines that he will and will not cross. Mm-hmm. There is that moment, and that adds that level of realism that made for a very dramatic movie of, like, you can't take comic book Batman in a situation where, okay, live action, people are dying left and right because of the Joker. And what does Batman do? He just throws him in the asylum again, and you know he's gonna break out. And Batman knows he's gonna break out, but he still throws him in there anyway.
Even, I don't keep up with DC Comics so well, but I think so much, and I think the universe has since been reset again.
Yes, the New 52.
But, like, there was the thing, either it was the universe had been reset since this moment, or, like, this happened in, like, an alternate universe, or it just happened and they retconned it in some way. But, like, I remember seeing, like, a recent thing about Batman dealing with the Joker and, like, Superman killing the Joker so that Bruce didn't have to.
Yeah.
And, like, that was a very interesting way, a very cool way of, like, dealing with the idea that, like, Bruce does not like to kill, and neither does Superman, but it really, really adds to his character that he was willing to spare his friend from having to do it himself.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, like, that's an interesting plot line in the comics, and that's something that could have been done on screen, but after the
But
destruction...
neither of the characters on screen are interesting enough.
No.
Like-
I mean, to be fair, the actor that they got to play Superman is definitely, like, handsome enough, but...
Yeah, but movie Superman is so boring. He's so boring.
It's just because the Superman movie was kind of boring.
Man of Steel was...
It was like half the movie was basically, I'm Superman, but man, I was cursed with amazing abilities. I'm such a freak. I should just be a loner, man. No one should be subjected to my hotness, to my super strength. I can hear shit. I got X-ray vision. No one should know.
They spent way too much time on backstory. And, like, I was impressed with myself for being able to sit through that whole movie, because that was a long movie, and not much happened.
No.
Like,
It's like halfway through the movie, other Kryptonians showed up, which, like, where the fuck did they come from? I'm the sole survivor sent to Earth. Oh, here's a fleet of me.
and it's a shame that DC movies don't do so well, because I like DC. I'm definitely more of a Marvel person, because that's what I grew up with, more so than DC. But, like, I like DC, and I want their movies to be good. I really want a Nightwing movie, but I want a Nightwing movie after DC gets his shit together.
I don't think a Nightwing...
Or a Nightwing series. The shows do really well.
The shows do well. I don't think a Nightwing movie would be good, only because Nightwing's solo series, he has bad villains. That's the only... That's the worst thing about his own solo series is he's moved out of Gotham. He's in a new city called Bloodhaven. Mm-hmm. He's basically Batman, but in a rundown town. And his villains suck. There's another line of comics that he has called Grayson, when he, like, his identity gets revealed, and so he just rolls with it and becomes an agent. That storyline, that series of comics, that's cool. Because it's Nightwing, but he's more James Bond than he is, Batman.
Yeah.
And his villains in that is like a secret organization. It's sort of like, again, James Bond Inspector. He's going after this organization, this league of evil ne'er-do-wells, but God, that was a word. But he's doing shit against people that are actually cool to watch him do shit against. Mm-hmm. Unlike everyone in DC, minus the Dark Knight. I'm never not going to say that, because that's kind of the thing. Like, if you have a good hero, you need a good villain.
Right.
If you
like,
have
a good hero needs a good foil, like
Yeah.
the Joker and Batman.
Yeah, and
Like-
that's what made me feel like Heath Ledger's Joker worked. I need to start calling him Joker, because Heath Ledger's Joker, we all know when we're talking about the Dark Knight which Joker it is.
Right.
That's redundant at this point. Anyway, when we're talking about the Joker from the Dark Knight, it's like he works with the Batman of that movie. Mm-hmm. He works in that movie. Their dynamic works in that movie. And when you see Bane in the next movie, I feel like that's the same Batman from the last one. I feel like this is the same universe. They just took down the Joker like months ago.
Right.
Like it's a continuation, but they work together. I feel like Zod in Man of Steel, for what he was, for a Kryptonian, so he has the same powers as Superman, he was a good villain. Because he was basically evil Superman. Mm-hmm. But then you have gritty, moody Superman, who's just not fun to watch, who's just a buzzkill the entire way. Like, no matter how handsome he is, a handsome buzzkill is still a buzzkill.
Right. It's not any more fun to be around.
No. It just makes him slightly more attractive to be around. But it's like watching him then try to, like, make you care about him struggling with the decision to kill someone because he has to, how else would, within the established world of that movie, how else are you going to take this guy down?
Right.
They didn't introduce any other means of taking him out without killing him.
Yeah, like, and Man of Steel did a really, really poor job of making you care enough about Superman and about his morals. And, like, when his big moral dilemma comes down to, I have to kill this person or let them win, and, like, them winning is, like, an earth-destroying event. Like, you don't care enough about him to care about that struggle. You're like, just kill him and save the world.
Yeah. And to be fair, in that fight, they murdered so many people,
right.
Destroyed so much stuff. A satellite crashed into the city. Buildings have been destroyed. Like, you've leveled half the population. and yet in Batman v Superman, he's viewed as a god. A savior of the human race. And Batman's just like, I don't like that. I'm gonna go punch him in the face. That is the plot of that movie.
Basically.
That is the plot of that movie. And Lex Luthor made a fucking mutant thing. Alright, that's cool too. But no, Batman has to punch Superman in the face.
That's the thing. Done better, Lex Luthor is a fantastic foil to Superman.
Yes.
Done better than, like, Batman v Superman.
It's... See, Lex Luthor to me is sort of like if Batman had a god complex and didn't run around in a batsuit. Like, if Bruce Wayne had a god complex, that essentially is Lex Luthor. He's super intelligent and super conniving and uses his wealth and his power to influence things in order to stop and hurt Superman.
Right.
That makes sense.
Never thought about it that way, but yeah.
That's literally his character, and it's like, if you focus on that aspect of, like, this guy trying to, you know, ruin Superman, like, don't make it about... See, this is the sad thing. At the end of the day, a Superman movie is going to be about Superman. Mm-hmm. He has to show off his powers. He has to show off his he has to fly. He has to have super strength. Has to do some night vision stuff. Has to do some fucking X-ray vision shit. But, like, to make that cool in a movie with Lex Luthor and keep it, you know, realistic, the thing that they should do, which could have been like a slight tweak on the plot of Batman v Superman, just have Lex Luthor use his power and influence to make a scandal, to turn the public against Superman. Like, he comes out and he's saving the day, and it's like, oh my god, this guy with these godly powers, you know, right. this is the biggest threat we've ever known. He's an alien. He's blah blah blah. Realistic fears that a lot of people have, put in a movie. Like, suddenly, if today some godlike being came down to Earth and was just super chill. I mean, yes, he could destroy you with a look, but man, is he so chill. Like, that would still be terrifying to know that there's probably more of these out there. They're probably not all as cool as this one.
Right.
Like, you could turn the fear against Superman and use that as a plot to, like, bring him down. Now, can you do this in a way to, like, really show off his powers? Probably not. But it would still make for a much more interesting movie. Like, having him be the underdog would be a lot better than just having him be the godlike loner. Like, yeah. Like, from Jump Street, Superman is perfect.
Well, DC movies are obsessed with making their protagonists, like, loners. When, like, 9 times out of 10, like, it's really hard to imagine Batman without Robin. And, like, the fact that he even joined the Justice League means he's not this big, like, I only work alone, and, like...
Yeah. like it's the thing with DC that upsets me is outside of the movies they have good storylines and they have great franchises outside of the movies. The cartoons are amazing. Teen Titans, Young Justice, Justice League, Batman animated, great. Arrow, Flash, like
no, I've been thinking like the creators of the DC movies really need to get together with the creators of the DC shows and talk to them, get some tips, because the DC shows are great.
That was a mouthful.
Like, and I think one of the things, like I brought up before, the DC movies are always a little timid about getting too comic booky, whereas you get something like The Flash, they just introduced the elongated man like in The Flash, and it works because they're just bold and unafraid with it. Like, yep, we did that. What are you gonna do about it? It's The Flash. The Flash is comic booky as hell.
The Flash is a character that you can't not get comic booky with.
Yeah. Even Arrow, which started out with kind of that fear of getting too comic booky, has gotten more and more comic booky as the series has gone on.
But see, a good example of like, I feel like from what I've seen of Gotham, it's not too comic booky. Mm-hmm. Like it's not. It's a good mix of like realism and Gotham. Right.
And that's one of the things that I think worked. Which movie was it? The Winter Soldier for Marvel. I feel like is a really, really good example of like realism and comic book storyline. Because The Winter Soldier is about as realistic as you're gonna get with a comic book storyline. And like, it worked really, really well as a live action movie adaptation. But like, DC tends to go too far with like trying to make it realistic, and they just make it not any fun. And like,
I will say this about superhero movies. They don't... And,
I don't want my superhero movies to be realistic. Like, that's my thing. I want my superhero movies to be superhero movies.
See, I'm kind of the middle of the road on that kind of thing. I want them to be good movies, but I feel like depending on what they want to do, it's the same thing with any story. Depending on what you want to do with the story, it can be really, really good. But if you don't do it the right way, it suffers. Like example, and I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but Game of Thrones is a really good example because the book has a lot of politics, a lot of planning, a lot of build-up, and a lot of magic. The show removes almost 100% of the magic, and a lot of the side characters, they boiled down the story to its bare bones and its most realistic, and made it into a show. And it works.
And then part of that is because you really can't do all that with a show. And with a movie. Like with any adaptation from comic book to movie, comic book to show, book to movie, book to show, you're going to have to strip it down. But like...
But here's like
Game of Thrones still embraces its source material. Mm-hmm. It doesn't try to be less Song of Ice and Fire. Like, Marvel doesn't try to be less comic book. Mm-hmm. Like, DC, I think DC would benefit a lot from, like, embracing what it is more.
It's a thing of, like, with the Game of Thrones example, it's a situation where it's like they embrace the difference between... They've removed the magic from this world, essentially. How can we now get from, like, point A to point B plausibly without that aspect of magic? like to drive this plot point along. Like down the lines in the later seasons and stuff like that, you know, there are magical elements,
Right.
but a lot of it, like, that was introduced early on in the books and early on in the overall story is not there in the show. But it still works. The show could still go on without the magic. They've removed, like, a huge fantasy element from this fantasy show and still makes it work. I feel like you can remove, like, the comic book from superhero movies and things like that.
And I do agree that to a certain extent you have to. But
I don't think you do if you can do it well. I just feel like you have to make that choice and stick with it. Like, you have to make the choice.
Why do anime adaptations, like anime to live action, why does that always fail? Because it's really, really difficult to adapt one medium to another. It just doesn't work as well. You have to change things. You have to adapt to the medium you're working with. And that's what I mean by, to a certain extent, you have to.
I mean, when you're boiling things down to an hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah, like Civil War can't be near as complex in a single movie than it was in the comic books.
No, and oh my god, the comics were so good. But again, and that goes back to, holy shit, we've derailed so much. That goes back to that goes back to the thing that I brought up originally with what made the Marvel stuff good, in my opinion, was they can't get into all these complex storylines, and they can't get into all these, like, characters that are introduced in the Civil War or that play major roles in the Civil War, because they're not introduced in the movies. They don't have the rights to the characters. Mm-hmm. They can't write these characters in. They can't write major characters in and retcon them.
Right.
They can't make Spider-Man and, like, oh, another experimentation. You know, you can't make a move like that, a big bold move like that, with a character as big and important as Spider-Man. If they didn't have the rights to the Hulk, I feel like they would still make the Avenger movie. They would just rewrite it without the Hulk.
Yeah, and Marvel adapts to those changes that they have to make very well. DC doesn't.
No, DC's storylines seem like a mix of they're kind of nitpicking storylines that they like from the comics, they like from, you know, this, that, and the other, and let's now try to figure out how can we make this storyline a movie, not how can we make it a movie within the realms of this universe that we've created, like Marvel has. Marvel, again, they have the restrictions of rights and the restrictions of blah blah blah. DC, it's like, okay, Suicide Squad is cool in the comics. But the Suicide Squad is like a group of villains. What group of villains do we want on the Suicide Squad? Alright, Harley Quinn, Deadshot. They're not taking the exact ones from the comic, they're just taking the concept of them. Mm-hmm. They're taking the idea of the Suicide Squad and, okay, those two were members at one point, let's put them on a team. Those guys were members at some point, let's throw them on a team. Who do they fight in one storyline? No, not that one. Her. She's good. It's sort of, it feels more thrown together, and it's like the Batman v Superman stuff. That's a storyline that's in there, which they then threw like from my understanding of the Justice League is, and this is gonna sound like a weird tangent. My understanding of the Justice League is from the cartoon, where they all showed up, like, one big event kind of caused them to meet in one area, where they met each other for the first time. They don't even really know of each other's existences at that point, with the exception of Batman, because he's Batman. Right. And so it's like them...
Mr. Obsessive Compulsive about learning everything you possibly can about people.
Exactly. So it's like they're learning about each other then, and then they realize, oh, we're all on the same side, they band together to stop the big bad or whatever, and realize, that could have been a lot worse if we weren't working together. Maybe we should do this more often.
Right.
And
didn't they, like, in the movies, they, like, made it so, like, Bruce kind of, like, Nick Fury'd it.
Yeah.
And, like, just...
Exactly. He's been scouting out all these people. Like, from the trailer alone, he's been scouting out all these people, and they're talented, and you know what? He's building a team. A team to save the world. But it's more like, no, in every other instance, it just happened. It happened, and it worked once, and it's like, just in case this happens again, maybe we should actually, like, do something with this whole thing. But it's like, no, Batman v Superman, it combined multiple plot points, multiple storylines, like the stuff with Doomsday in that movie. That's a Superman villain from a Superman storyline, had not a goddamn thing to do with Batman or Wonder Woman. And yet somehow they're there. The fight with Batman and Superman had not a goddamn thing to do with Wonder Woman, and yet somehow she's in the middle of this thing?
Just there.
Yeah, and it's like they...
Well, wasn't she there because of Lex Luthor? Like, she was there for, like, his mutant thing?
Probably.
Like,
I don't know.
I don't remember what happened in that movie.
But it's like there's multiple plot lines from, like, multiple plots in the comic books, in different comic books, involving those characters. It's like, this is a Batman plot, this is a Superman plot, that's a...
Just kind of mush them together and...
mush them together into a
throw
movie
Wonder Woman in there.
and hope that it works. And you know what? It kind of didn't. It kind of didn't.
See, my biggest thing that I'm like, I want from the Justice League movie, since I haven't actually watched it yet, like, my biggest thing from the beginning has been, I love Ezra Miller, and I want him to be a good Barry Allen. Like, that's been, like, the only thing that I have, like, the only really feeling that I have towards that movie is I want Ezra Miller to be good.
Fingers crossed.
And I mean, seeing Jason Momoa shirtless, it's gonna be nice as well, but, like...
That's just because Jason Momoa is, like, hot. Like, goddamn, I want to be him. I want that face.
Jason Momoa is the, like, epitome of all the girls want him, all the men want to be him. Yes.
Like, which is, like, weird, because, like, if you watch him in any of the older things that he's been in, it's like, oh, random white dude. Because that's what he looks like in every goddamn thing. He's like that Dawson's Creek white guy. That's
then
just
Game
like...
of Thrones happened, and he glowed up.
And he's just like...
like, that was the glow up to end all glow ups.
It's like sexy barbarian man. Like, please show me your ways. If I have to pillage a village to get that body, I will.
I like that because it rhymes. It's pillage village. I think that's a good place to end this.
Yeah, probably.
Sexy Jason Momoa, pillage village.
There you go, internet.
This went from movies to, like, why DC has not been doing well.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we can actually talk about movies and bar DC and Marvel from the conversation so this doesn't happen.
We've gotten it out. See, here's this. This is the good thing. We've gotten it out the way. Next podcast can be a part 2.
We could have, like, the same conversation all over again, knowing us. Like,
to be fair, we had the same conversation again this podcast. We talked about this before turning the mic on, and then we're just like, this is our episode. And then we turned the mic on and had the same exact conversation a second goddamn time.
Thank you for joining us. Hopefully we will see you next time. The next podcast when we, like, properly talk about movies, maybe. Who knows? Something might happen in the next couple weeks that, we want to talk about an entirely different subject, and we still don't get to movies.
Probably not.